Hey everyone, in this video I'll walk you through Unconstrained Delegation attack using combination of both Windows and Linux systems. There's also a way to perform this attack completely from Linux, but I'll cover this in a separate video as I don't want this video to be too long. I'll also show you a way to reduce risk if you absolutely have to have a computer with Unconstrained Delegation in your Active Directory environment. So let's dive in. First, let's talk about Unconstrained Delegation and what it is. So basically, if I go to my computer right here, just go from PC and I go to Delegation tab. Here it says test this computer for delegation for any service Kerberos. That's what basically sets the unconstrained delegation on a computer object. And this is basically delegation that was available since Windows 2000 and it's kind of legacy, and there are better ways to do this, which I'll show later. How it works is if a user requests a service ticket on the server, which is this Gotham computer, that is configured for unconstrained delegation, the user's TGT, which is ticket guided ticket, is embedded into the service ticket that is present to the server. So basically, every time you want to access this server, you'll send a TGS to the server, and it's gonna have a TGT embedded in it. So basically, this server, every time you authenticate it, it's gonna store ticket guided ticket, which can be dumped or used, and that's where the attack comes in. So there are two scenarios, two attack scenarios for this. One, we can connect to the server. We do need local admin rights on the machine to carry out the attacks. So basically, scenario one is we have to just sit and wait for a privileged user to authenticate to this box, and we can steal their TGT and request other services with it. Or scenario two is that we leverage some type of coercion, for example, PetitPotam or printer bug, to make one computer authenticate to this computer and capture its TGT. For example, we can force a domain controller to authenticate to this computer that's configured for unconstrained delegation. We can steal that computer's TGT and perform a DC sync attack because the domain controller has DC sync privileges. So we'll focus on the second scenario. I'll leverage PetitPotam to coerce the domain controller to authenticate to this server. Let's configure for unconstrained delegation, and we'll just perform a DC sync using that ticket. So let's dive in. So here I have my Gotham PC, which is configured for unconstrained delegation. Oops, wrong password. And we'll pretend that we compromise the user Peter Parker, that is local admin on this box, which happens. I did transfer Rubius already on this box because we'll have to use net. And we don't necessarily have to be on the domain controller to enumerate delegation. We can just use netexec. Command looks something like this. Specify LDAP because we have to query LDAP. Specify our domain controller IP and our username and password. And we also specify that --find -delegation flag, which is going to list our delegations configured in the domain environment. So hit enter, and we can see that Gotham PC has unconstrained delegation set up. Alright, so here, when it comes to the toolset, we'll use PetitPotam, as I already mentioned, to coerce authentication, and we'll also need Rubius from Ghostback. You can either compile it or you can just Google sharp collection and get it from there. It's already pre-compiled, but it's better to compile your own tools. So I already transferred the Rubius on this box. That's configured for unconstrained delegation. So right now, what we want to do is we want to monitor tickets basically every time somebody authenticates. We want to see their ticket guided tickets or TGTs that we can steal. So command looks like this. It's gonna be Rubius Windows, monitor. I need to specify the interval, like how many seconds it's gonna check in to see if there are any new tickets that came in. I'll specify 5 seconds, and I'll do nor up to make sure it's easy to copy when tickets come in. So I hit that, and right now we can see there are a couple of TGTs for our user, for our machine. Basically, we can steal those, but we're interested in the main controller. So go back to the command line, and we'll use PetitPotam as already mentioned. You have this command, but I'll just show you the options. We do --help. Basically, all it needs is a valid username, password, domain, and we need to specify our listener, which is where we want to connect to, and target is the computer we want to connect back to us. So in our scenario, we want our domain controller to connect back to Gotham system, and that way the TGT will be stored in here. So syntax will look like this. We need to specify our user, which is Peter Parker. It can be any valid domain user, it doesn't really matter. We specify our domain, marvel.local. Pipe is basically the pipe it's gonna use to coerce authentication. I'll specify the shell in case some of those don't work on my domain controller. And here's the important part. For our listener, where it's gonna connect to, we have to specify FQDN, otherwise it's not gonna work. Because this will actually force Kerberos authentication. If you just do an IP address, it's gonna send an NTLM authentication and the ticket will not be cached. So it's important to specify the FQDN of the machine. And our target, which is the DC IP, this can be just an IP address because we just want to coerce it. And I hit enter, and it's gonna go and it's like, oh yeah, it looks like attack worked. It was able to coerce the main controller to authenticate back to our Gotham machine, which is configured for Unconstrained Delegation. So if we go back here and scroll up, look at the tickets, and here we have it. So we have a TGT for hide.dc, which we can use to perform a DC sync. We'll do it back from our Linux box. So I'll just copy the TGT. And here, because it's in .kb format, we need to convert it to Ccache, which is what Linux understands. So we'll just use inpacket for that. It's an old ticket I was using. So we just save it as base64. And then we need to base64 decode it first. And we'll use ticket converter.py, which is part of inpacket, to convert it from .carby, which is what Windows understands, to Ccache, which is what Linux understands. And we hit enter. And we got a .ccache. Now we just have to export it into environmental variable, kb5ccname. It's basically for inpacket tools to understand, like, hey, it's just, here's where the ticket is that you should use when we use Kerberos with inpacket. So I'll just do that. And it's export kb5ccname hide-dc.ccache, which is the ticket we just created. Basically converted from kirby.ccache. Hit enter. And now we can use this ticket with inpacket secrets dump to actually do a DC sync attack. But before that, just make sure you have FQDN for the domain controller in your etc host. Basically, it should look like this. Because Kerberos only likes FQDNs, it doesn't like IPs. You have to configure your host file to make sure it points to the domain controller. So now we can use secrets dump with Kerberos to actually perform a DC sync. I will specify -k, which is Kerberos, no pass to specify that it shouldn't ask us for a password. We need FQDN on the domain controller, and -dc is actually what does the DC sync attack. So hit enter, and boom, here we go. We're able to perform a DC sync and dump all domain credentials. So here's the whole process for unconstrained delegation attack. If you want to learn more, I highly recommend this article, which is Delegate Like a Boss, Abusing Coerce Delegation Active Directory by Guidepoint Security. It goes into unconstrained delegation, constrained delegation, and resource-based constrained delegation, which are all three types of delegations that are possible with an Active Directory. So yeah, if you have time, give it a read. It's a very good article and showcases some interesting examples. All right, now let's talk about mitigation. So what can we do to mitigate this attack? Basically, ideally, you shouldn't use unconstrained delegation and should use more secure delegation, such as resource-based constrained delegation or constrained delegations of unconstrained, as those are more secure. Or what you can do if you absolutely have to have unconstrained delegation in your environment, you can set all your tier 0 assets to mark as sensitive and cannot be delegated. And yeah, that's basically the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.